What I do with my life is none of your business. My son abandoned me to live in Europe and never contacted me again. He only showed up when he found out about the $2 million inheritance. But what I did with it cleansed my soul. I had given my life to raise him, to make sure he had everything I never did. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, my hands calloused from the machinery at the factory and the soil in the garden I kept to put food on the table. My wife had passed when he was just a boy, and I became both mother and father. I taught him to be a good man, to value hard work and respect, or so I thought. He was smart, my Pedro. He studied hard, got a scholarship to a good university, and then the world opened up for him. He moved to Europe for a job, and slowly, the distance became a chasm. Calls became less frequent, then stopped. My letters went unanswered, my emails unread. I was a ghost from a past he had outgrown. I knew he was doing well. I saw pictures on social media. A beautiful apartment in Paris, dinners with friends in fancy restaurants, ski trips in the Alps. His life was vibrant. A world away from my quiet existence in the small house I'd built with my own hands. I never asked for anything. All I wanted was a phone call, a simple, "How are you, Dad?" But a decade passed and the silence was deafening. I was lonely, but I was not weak. I had my garden, my dog, and my memories. My pension was modest, but I had always been frugal and I had managed to put away a decent sum. My only regret was that the money and everything I had built would one day go to a son who had forgotten me. Then, one rainy afternoon, a call came, a number I didn't recognize. It was Pedro. His voice, once so familiar, was now a polished foreign thing. "Dad," he said, and the word felt hollow. He asked how I was, if I was still living in the same house. The questions were perfunctory, a formality before the real purpose of his call. He told me he was coming to visit. The suddenness of it made me suspicious. My heart, a thing I had kept carefully guarded for a decade, fluttered. Was he finally coming home? Was he sorry? My doubts were confirmed the moment he walked through the door. He wasn't alone. He was with his wife, a woman named Sophia, all designer clothes and dismissive glances. They didn't come to reconnect. They came with a purpose, their eyes scanning the house, assessing my old, worn-out furniture, the peeling paint on the walls, the framed photos of a younger, happier family on the mantelpiece. All of it was being mentally cataloged. They didn't ask about my life, my health, or my friends. They spoke of themselves, their careers, their grand plans. The air in my home, once so peaceful, was now thick with an unspoken agenda. It was 2 days in when Pedro finally brought it up, his voice casual, almost bored. "So, Dad," he said as if discussing the weather, "I heard from Aunt Anna that you came into some money. 2 million reais, right? From the land sale?" Aunt Anna, bless her gossiping heart, had shared the news with his relatives, and the information had traveled across the ocean faster than a heartfelt letter. My son hadn't reached out to me for a decade. Not a birthday call, not a Christmas card. But a 2 million raise inheritance? That got his attention. Sophia, with her sharp calculating eyes, leaned forward. "That's a lot of money, Grandpa," she said, using the term for the first time, the word a sugary trap. "You know, with your health and this old house, it's not safe. We've been thinking. It would be best for you to move in with us. We have a spare room, we'll take care of you. We can manage the finances, make sure you don't get scammed." I was no longer a father to be loved, but a problem to be solved, a resource to be exploited. A wave of sorrow, followed by a cold, hard anger, washed over me. All the sacrifices, all the loneliness, all the years of silence. It wasn't worth 2 million reais. It was an insult, a profound, soul-crushing insult. I had spent a decade feeling sorry for myself, for the son I had lost. But in that moment, as I watched their greedy, impatient faces, I realized I was not a victim. I was the one with the power, and I would use it. I smiled. A slow, gentle smile that didn't reach my eyes. "That's very kind of you," I said, my voice calm, my heart a stone. "But what I do with my life is none of your business." The words hung in the air, a declaration of independence. Their smiles faltered. The easy confidence in their eyes was replaced by confusion. They thought I was naive, a simple old man. They had no idea that their greed had just lit a fire within me, a fire that would burn their world to the ground. "I'm your son. I'm just looking out for you." Sophia's expression hardened, the pleasant facade crumbling. "This isn't just about you, old man," she hissed, her voice low. "That money could secure our children's future. It's our legacy." It was the moment I stopped being sad and started being smart. The day they arrived, I had been a grieving father. The day they spoke of inheritance, I became a man with a plan. A quiet, meticulous plan they would never see coming. While they spent the next few days snooping through my house and making thinly veiled demands, I was busy. I went to the bank, not to add funds, but to transfer the 2 million Rs to an offshore account I had set up years ago, a secret I had kept from everyone, even my late wife. It was a failsafe, a last resort in case of a financial crisis. Now, it was a weapon. I also made a new will, witnessed by my most trusted friend, a lawyer who had been a client of mine at the factory for over 30 years. The new will was simple and ironclad. Not a single cent would go to Pedro or his family. The entire sum was to be donated to a local orphanage and a foundation for retired factory workers, a cause dear to my heart. The days passed in a strange dance. They would try to manipulate me with saccharine words and fake affection. "Oh, Dad, remember that time we went fishing?" Pedro would say, trying to conjure a past he had long since abandoned. "Grandpa, you should see the plans we have for the kids' new school," Sophia would add, their voices dripping with fake warmth. I would nod, smile, and say little. My silence they mistook for senility. They thought they had me right where they wanted me. I also made a call, not to a family member but to my oldest friend, a man named Roberto, a retired detective who had helped me with small legal matters over the years. I had him conduct a discreet investigation into Pedro's life in Europe. The report he sent back was eye-opening. The successful career was a lie. Pedro had lost his job a year ago, was deep in debt, and was a compulsive gambler. The beautiful Parisian apartment was rented, and they were months behind on the payments. Sophia's designer clothes were bought on credit. Their entire life was a carefully constructed lie. The 2 million reais wasn't for their children's future. It was a lifeline, a desperate attempt to save themselves from financial ruin. The truth gave me a calm and cold sense of purpose. Their impatience grew. "Dad, we need to talk about this," Pedro said one evening, his tone now a blend of frustration and forced calm. "We've made a reservation at a fancy restaurant. We need to celebrate your good fortune and talk about our future." The restaurant was the perfect stage. I knew they would try one last time to pressure me into signing over the inheritance. At the restaurant, under the soft glow of a chandelier, they were at their most charming. They ordered the most expensive wine and the finest food, all on my credit card, of course. "To your health, Dad," Pedro toasted, a smirk playing on his lips. I watched them, their faces flushed with a confidence built on a lie, and I felt a profound sense of detachment. They were strangers to me. The son I had known, the son I had loved, was gone. "Pedro," I said, my voice low. "Sophia, there's something I need to tell you." They leaned in, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. They thought I was finally going to give in. They had no idea I was about to drop a bomb. The waiter came to our table, a sleek menu in his hands. "Would you like to see the dessert menu, sir?" he asked. "No, thank you," I said, looking him in the eye. "I'm about to serve the only dessert that matters, and you won't believe what happens next." Pedro and Sophia were a tableau of greedy anticipation, their smiles plastered on their faces like masks. "What is it, Dad?" Pedro asked, a smug, impatient edge in his voice. "Are you finally going to tell us what you're doing with the money? The inheritance you've been so interested in? The one that brought you all the way here? It's gone." The smiles on their faces evaporated. Pedro's jaw dropped and Sophia's eyes widened in disbelief. "What do you mean, gone?" Pedro stammered, the color draining from his face. "Did you give it away? Did you get scammed?" "All of it. To an account you can't touch and in a will that gives it all away." I pulled a document from my jacket pocket, a copy of the new will. "I've bequeathed it all to 2 foundations. One for a local orphanage and another for a fund to help retired factory workers. The money is to be used for those who truly need it, for people who understand the meaning of hard work and sacrifice." Then the dam broke. "You did what?" Pedro bellowed, his voice rising, drawing the attention of other diners. "You can't do this. I'm your son. That money is mine. It's my legacy. Your legacy is 10 years of silence. Your legacy is an empty house and a lonely old man. Your legacy is the life you chose, far away from the man who gave you everything. You old fool, we came here to help you, to give you a better life." He also happens to be a retired police detective. He told me all about your little gambling problem, Pedro, about the debts, the unpaid rent, and about how you and your wife were months from losing everything. That inheritance wasn't for your children. It was a last-ditch effort to save yourselves. They looked at each other, their faces pale with shock and betrayal. My words were a direct hit. "You were so desperate to get your hands on that money that you didn't even bother to ask how I was. If I was sick or lonely," I continued, the words now flowing easily. A decade of hurt finding its release. "All you saw was a number, 2 million reais. You thought I was a naive old man, a burden to be shuffled off and a bank account to be drained. But you underestimated me. You forgot that I built this life from nothing. You forgot that the man who raised you and taught you to be a man, well, he still knows a thing or two about business and a whole lot more about people. The waiter, a young man who had been watching the scene unfold, came over to the table with the bill. I looked at Pedro and Sofia, their eyes wide with disbelief, their hands trembling with rage. As for this dinner, I said, placing my credit card on the table, it's on me. Consider it my last act of charity for those who have forgotten the meaning of family. As I walked out, I didn't look back. The sound of Pedro's furious, desperate cries and Sofia's sobs followed me out the door. The world outside felt different, lighter. I had not just taken back my money, I had taken back my dignity. I had cleansed my soul. I went home. My house was small, but it was mine. My dog greeted me at the door, his tail wagging with a joy that was pure and uncomplicated. The next day I started my new life. I had the money to travel, to see the world I had worked so hard for but never had the chance to experience. I visited the orphanage and met the children who would one day benefit from my legacy. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a man, whole and complete. My son had come back for the money and in the end lost everything. And I, the old man he had abandoned, had finally truly found my freedom.